Thanks for joining me here today. Today we're going to talk about the top 5 ribbon customization techniques, and we're going to be going through kind of a bit of background and then get into the actual stuff here. So let's get to it. So again, my name is Mitch Milam. I am an independent consultant and trainer, a 10-time Microsoft Dynamics MVP. You can find me at xrmcoaches.com. That's my email address. My main blog right now is Infinite-X. I'm on Twitter. And here's a shortcut to my LinkedIn profile. So if we're not already connected, then please do so. So a couple things we have. Next week, I have a upgrade strategies deep dive. A registration ends today, so don't forget to sign up for that if you want to. Also, next Friday, we're going to be doing project service automation, doing an introduction to that. So that's one of the new previews that the CRM team has put out that came out of the Field 1 acquisition. And then I have a new training class starting on August 1st for Microsoft Dynamics developers. So a little bit here on the webinar. If you want to speak, everybody's muted, of course. If anybody wants to speak, just raise your hand and I'll unmute you. Otherwise, just put your question in the question box and we'll answer them as we get them. So here's the training map for this year. So I'm making pretty much forward progress through things. So got a lot of knowledge bits stuff set up, so those are emailed tips and tricks if you haven't seen that before. Got also some learning plans that are free to download to figure out how to do some stuff. And then my administration book is in the process to get into Amazon.com, so hopefully that'll be happening by the end of August, depending on how long it takes that process to go. I'm scheduling it for the 1st, but we have to go through several manual labor steps involved, some proofing and things like that. So that'll be going, and the other ones will be coming out soon. Okay, so let's do an overview here. So there's a thing called a ribbon diff XML. So this is a fancy term for how CRM stores the ribbon stuff. So what's fascinating about the way that the ribbon is created is, and when I say ribbon, that's now the command bar is what they call it, but it's still called the ribbon diff XML. So what they do is they don't actually have a list of commands and such. What they do is they have a standard set, and then any modifications you make is a differential to that model. So that's why they call it the ribbon diff XML. So when you look at what's being customized, you're only going to see what you've changed or added or removed, etc. There are 3 major components that we kind of work with. Most of the time, we are working with command bar when we're working with CRM 2013 and above. 2011 still has a ribbon. Then there's also a slight variation for the tablet. So these are the 3 major things that we play with here. Here are the different types of clients that we have. So we have the website, of course, Outlook, the tablet / mobile is a different experience, and then the Interactive Service Hub is a 4th experience if you haven't played with that yet. These are the kinds of components that we can actually add to the ribbon. I'm going to use the term ribbon because that's kind of how everything's laid out. So when I say ribbon, I'm also talking about command bar and everything else. So just kind of bear with me on that. We can have standard buttons. We can have a split button, a fly out, a menu selection, and a group. Most of the time you work with buttons. Sometimes split buttons, sometimes fly outs, but most of the time it's going to be a button we're going to be working with. So where can we customize these ribbons? Well, we have an application-wide location, which means it's going to show up everywhere within the user interface, on all forms, on all grids, which are views, of course, or specific to an entity. So depending on where you want to put stuff, occasionally you will have something that is on more than one or maybe all entities, but in most cases, in my experience, I'm after an application-specific thing. So I need the record to be open, or at least selected. Most of the time it's open, just because of clarity's sake, quite honestly. And then what you could do is actually modify that and then have it show up whenever a record's open. So here are the components that make up the thing that goes, this is the stuff behind the scenes, in other words. So we have a button on our command bar. We have a command that tells the button what to do and how to do it. So we have rules that specify the enablement of the button. So in other words, is it enabled or disabled? Then we have rules that tells it is it displayed or not displayed. And then finally, when we click on the button, what happens? We can either launch another URL or we can go run a piece of JavaScript code. Hang on a second, please. What's interesting about the 2013 above interface, the enable rules and display rules now function very similar to each other, even though that's not really the way they were designed. If you have a disabled button, it will not be generated on the user interface. That's something they put in, so it's a slight change. So commands defined, again, three things. The enable rules, when we're doing it, display, when to display it, and then again, the actions is when, what are we doing whenever somebody clicks the button. So those are the three things that you need to be concerned with. And we're not going to get into really complicated rules today because this is like a half-a-day class, quite honestly. But just know that there is lots of stuff that you could actually key off of to define if something is enabled or displayed. Here are the built-in rules that we use for enable. So we can work on a client type. We can work on either a specific entity, if the form state in a specific state, if we're using Outlook, if there's something on the page. You can actually even trigger rules to be enacted when a value on the form changes. So you can literally say, okay, don't show this button until this field is set at this value. Okay. If we're working on a grid, so we have a button on a view, we can use a selection count, say, okay, if it's more than one, don't do this, or if it is one, don't do this or do this, etc. The display rules are very, very similar to this, so much of the same state, of the same stuff. So entity type, the data for the form, the client type, values, all the other stuff that goes with it. So again, all of these can be used to actually do something to display a ribbon button. So here are the common operations. There are more than 5. So this is just kind of an overview of this is what most people do with ribbon. And I'll verify this with Scott DeRoe, who is the creator of the ribbon workbench we're going to be using in a minute. So we add buttons, we hide buttons, we unhide buttons, we move them around, we change the label, and we change the button command itself. In all honesty, most of the time I spend with modifying the ribbon these days is to actually undo what Microsoft did. Because in 2013, 15, and 16, occasionally you'll find they'll go and turn things off because they think people don't need it, or they want to clarify or clean up the interface a bit, so they'll go and hide things. And so a lot of what we do as customizers, we actually go re-enable those things. So we're going to be doing that for a thing there too. Okay. The way that you customize the ribbon, and we have a tool for this, is to create a solution, and it should hold only the entities you want to customize, nothing else. And this is typically different from your normal development solution. So when I say different, here's what happens, and we're going to be walking through the process, so I'm just going to prepare you. The way the ribbon workbench works is it will actually open up the solution that you specify, and then when you get done with your work, it publishes a solution. Well, it's a true publish of the solution. So if your solution takes 45 minutes to publish, it's going to take 45 minutes for it to publish. Okay. So most of the time, what you're doing when you're working with this is you can have your ribbons in multiple solutions, but the one that you're doing the editing on really only needs to contain the entities that you're working on specifically for this purpose, and that's it. Okay. The ribbon workbench is what I mentioned. This is the only tool that you should ever use, quite honestly, in my professional opinion. There are others out there. This is the one that's been the most used and the most updated in recent years. It's written by Scott DeRoe, another MVP friend of mine over in the UK. So we're going to be using one of his versions today. And so basically this will give us a visual environment with which to work and allow us to do stuff. Okay, so is there any questions on anything I covered about the background of how the ribbon is laid out and how the commands and stuff are organized? Anything at all? Nothing? Okay, well, let's go do some work. How about that? Okay. Green bar out of the way. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is go and create a new solution. So we do that by navigating to Solutions, Setting Solutions, and we're just going to create a new solution. And let's just call it Ribbon Updates. We're just going to select the default publisher, and we'll give it the standard 1.0 version, 0.0.0.0. We save that. And then we're going to add some components. So today we're going to be working with the account entity. So I'm going to go specify entity. I'm going to put a check mark beside the account. And I say add that. It's going to ask me which components to add. And just for giggles, I'm just going to say everything just to make it safe. Add all assets. And key here, as I mentioned, do not add other things. Actually, that one we do want to add in this case because we're going to be using that. So in this case, we do it most of the time. If it points to other entities, we do not want that. All we want in this solution is only the things we're going to be referencing. Okay, so if we're creating modifications to the ribbon for lead account contact, only put lead account contact in there. The reason we're putting this JavaScript resource in here is because we're actually going to be using it later. Okay, that's part of the demo here. So the key here is only put the stuff that you want in here because one, you don't need anything else, and two, you don't want a long publish time because since it does a full publish of the solution, it could take again multiple minutes. So you don't want your development process slowed down while you're just doing work here. And remember, this is in this development environment, we have created what is an unmanaged solution because it hasn't been exported yet. So this is just a container with pointers to things. So this is just copied. So again, it's not a copy, it's a pointer. So that points to the account, that points to this JavaScript resource, web resource. Okay. Now, when you install the Ribbon Workbench, now I actually have two versions here. He has one that has a version of 2013 and one's 2016. The 2016 version is still in beta. His 2013 version is written in Silverlight because it's a quite complicated interface. And so what happens is, this is Microsoft Edge. Well, Edge doesn't support Silverlight. So in order for us to actually use it with CRM, I have to go back to using Internet Explorer. Okay, we're going to be working with the one he has today, which is the 2016 version. And so this one is actually rewritten in JavaScript and HTML using his Sparkle XRM framework, and it's all it runs within any browser. Okay, so after you've installed the Ribbon Workbench, you need to do a Control F5 to get it to reload the page. And after you do so, when you go to Settings Solutions, or I think just Settings, you'll find this button here. So we're just going to launch it here. And then it's going to ask me, what kind of solution do you want to import? Okay. So Ribbon Updates is what we just created. It has our account in it. So I'm going to select OK with that. So it's going to download the solution, open it up, and then prepare it for the modification for the ribbon. This is why we don't want a lot of entities in here, because it's a very kind of time-consuming process to download everything and open it up. Okay, I know this is very hard to see because it's a very, very small font, but what this says, this top row is the home ribbon. So this is the application type ribbon. This is the ribbon for the subgrids. And then finally, this is the ribbon or command bar for the form. So it says home, subgrid, and form. Down at the bottom here, we have command bar, which is what we're working with. We also have access to the original ribbon and also the tablet command bar. Okay, we'll be working with these in just a second. In our toolbox, we have the different types of things that we can add, and all we really do is we drag and drop to where we want it. So the first thing I'm actually going to do is I'm going to go hide a button. So let's Okay, so we're working on the account here. If we had other entities, they would show up here. Let's go find something to hide. Let's say that I don't want something. What is something interesting that I don't like people doing? Tell you what, let's just do the hard way. Let's do delete. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select that, and then I'm going to right click on it. There's a built-in command within the ribbon editor that just says hide. Okay. Now you notice a couple things happen. The first off is it marked the ribbon, the command bar button with a mark. In this case, it's a slash through it, which means it's basically being deleted. If you add one, it will actually put a check mark beside it. Okay. You'll also notice down here what it did is it added some actions and a new command to this button. Okay. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to add a button. So I'm going to take this button here. I'm just going to drag it, put it right there. So this add the button, it's called button 2. How about we say, we call this our fancy button. And we can give it a tooltip and stuff. We can give it an icon if you wish. You don't have to, but since everything kind of has an icon, we can do it. The most important thing is we have to have a command. Okay, well, we don't have a command. This is for the other thing. So everything in the structure of how things works off the command. So what we're going to do here is we're going to go down to our commands here, and there's a plus button over on the right-hand side. I'll click that. I'm just going to call this new account command. Okay. At this point, I specify an action, a display rule, and enable rule. I'm going to specify an action. I'm going to add a JavaScript action, and I'm going to look for my I didn't see. There we go. That is my JavaScript resource. And then let me go check what I call this. Sorry about that. I need to know the function name to call. So this is my ribbon I've created, or resource. There's that. And I want to talk about this in just a second. So what this is saying is find this web resource and then run this function. Okay? So the way that I like to do things, what I advise all my students for my developer classes is you'll notice that this web resource has the word ribbon in it. What I like to do is actually split out my normal JavaScript on the account form from my ribbon JavaScript, because a lot of times when you're working on your standard JavaScript file and you see functions that are not being referenced, it's not intuitive that you're actually using them from a ribbon button. So you could accidentally remove them, which would break the system as soon as you deployed it. So I like to physically put them in a different place so that they're explicitly tied to the ribbon via a web resource that identifies itself as the account entity's ribbon JavaScript. Okay, so that is that. We're not going to worry about display rules right now. So we've got our new fancy button. You see the red check mark to say it's been moved, it's been changed, or this is addition. This one's been deleted. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over to my ribbon. Now this is counterintuitive, but this is just kind of the way it works. Okay, so just bear with me. This is kind of sort of documented, but I am going to go back and add back a button that we all need and use. So I'm going to click on the ribbon and I'm going to scroll way over here, and I'm going to find the old add related activity tab that used to be on our on the ribbon on the second tab there back in the days of 2011 and before 2011. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move this. So I'm just going to drag it this way. I think I'm going to drag it. first off, let me customize the button. Yeah, I could drag it. And I'm going to put it right in front of fancy button. And this is just a warning or just kind of information. It's like, hey, you are taking a button out of the managed solution, which is the built-in default system solution. I'm going to make a copy of it if that's okay with you. And the answer is always okay. Okay. So when I look at my phone call button, okay, so now we have phone call there. And I go and look at my command. So I'm going to customize the command. So I've already customized the button. Now I'm going to say I need to customize the command. I'm going to do that. Okay, so my command is add phone call to primary record. So the primary record will be the currently open phone call. Remember, we're working on the form command bar, so this is the one where the record is physically open. So if I click on that, you're going to see that I have a enable rule, or two enable rules and two display rules. The display rule is MSCRM. All built-in rules from Microsoft have a prefix of MSCRM dot. I don't want the command bar. Hide on command bar. I do not want that. So I am going to right-click on that and say remove from command. Okay? So this is just a warning saying, hey, you just did this. So basically what I did by removing the thing that told it to hide it, it's going to not hide it, which means it shows. Okay? Okay, so far we have deleted a button or hidden a button. We have added a new button, and then we have moved and re-enabled a button. So another thing I like to do, I go over here. Where's it this way? It's right here. Okay. Microsoft is very inconsistent. The way that they label the form editor button on all the things, it drives me crazy. Some places it says form. Some places it says form editor. I like it to all places show form editor. So I'm going to change this to say form editor. Okay. So there's that. Okay. So what we've done so far is we've removed a button, we've added a button, we've moved and unhidden a button, and then finally we've actually changed the label of a button. We can, if we want to, actually physically change the command we're working on. So if I go back to the button here, so this is the phone call button. Right now, it runs what they call a core command. The core command is add phone call to primary record. If I wanted to, I can remove this and put in my own command. So in other words, I don't want Microsoft's JavaScript function to fire when they click the button. I want my function to fire. So much the same way that we did with this one, which I forgot to specify by the command, by the way. That right there. So much the way that we specified the command for the button here, we would do the same thing there. We would just remove this one here, and we could actually put one of the others in place. And that would physically remove the link between Microsoft's code and the button. And we would substitute for our code for the button. Okay, makes sense? Okay, so I've done 4 things here. That's enough for one day. Let's go ahead and publish this. It makes a warning. Are you sure you want to do this? Okay. The answer is okay. Okay, a couple questions here. Lon says, this is the same interface using XRM Toolbox version. I don't know, Lon. I think it is. XRM Toolbox, somebody did something where they are actually putting that into a plugin to load it from within that tool. So supposedly it is. Arsenally asked, there's recorded. Yes, this will be recorded and put on YouTube later today. Lon asking, are there lists of CRM commands in the SDK? Maybe. Let's go look. I think where they are, if they are anywhere, is in There's a file, a folder called exported ribbon XML. It might be in here. This is where you get all the IDs, by the way. So kind of back up for a second. So you download the SDK, go to the resources folder, go to the exported ribbon XML folder, and then you'll find a ribbon XML file for every kind of entity. And basically, if you need to know what the IDs of things are, because this is how you turn them on and off. So I don't totally know if they're all documented, but you can probably figure out what they're doing in there just by looking at it at a current example. Okay, so let's go back and see if that's finished. It's going to take a bit of time. Okay, 36%. Any other questions while this is loading? Okay, so now it's publishing it. Okay, so got one message here, both successful. If I want to, I can look at the XML to see what was actually being generated. So this is what's actually being generated. A lot of the training material that you find on the ribbon is actually telling you how to write this stuff, which is totally a waste of time because nobody likes to write XML, at least I don't. So anyway, but this shows you how it works. Okay, so now we have to go back to our CRM interface. Now remember, the ribbon and the sitemap are really and truly only loaded one time, which is the first time you open the page. So in order to get the changes to show up, you have to actually do a Control F5 to actually have it reload the page. Wayne asks, in 2011, the display enable rules seem to be mandatory. I don't know if it changed, but I don't think they're mandatory the way that they used to be. That may be a 2016 thing, quite honestly, or it could just be a Ribbon Workbench thing with this version. I don't know. Alana asks, is it possible to disable a button depending on a particular role? Well, technically, the answer is yes. There is a role for basically where you have a JavaScript function, and that JavaScript function provides a return value of true or false. So you can check the current security roles and whatever the user has, and then basically just if they do not have one of those roles, you return false, and then it would not show up. Okay, so we got our ribbon published. Let's go. We've got the page reloaded. Now let's go back to the account and open up an account. I'll choose a datum. They said I will choose a datum. Okay, here is my fancy button. When I click my fancy button, I get my JavaScript function launched, which says you click the button. Here is my phone call. I click that, it opens up a phone call record. Here's why this specific thing is actually very valuable to your customer. When you click activities here and you add a phone call, this adds a completed phone call. We don't want to create a completed phone call. We want to create a new phone call. So by moving that button and removing the hide rule, we actually get to get the old way of doing things, which is the way we use for years, that basically allows us to create a new upcoming phone call. And by doing it like this, it automatically puts the call to the primary contact. Okay, now let me just state, this is CRM 2016 specific. Each version of CRM will work slightly different, so just keep that in mind. Don't call me and tell me I'm a liar in a month. Okay, it should also automatically put the regarding. So for your people that have a lot of phone calls they create or tasks, it doesn't really matter. You can put it right there. I've done that in several places. Okay, so phone call, fancy button. Where's the delete button? It's missing. Okay, and we also have our form editor. Okay, so basically all 4 of our customizations on the ribbon are now in place. And what did that take me? 10 minutes? And that include talking? Lucas, can you explain what would be required to hide deactivate a custom button when using the Outlook plugin? The ribbon, there's only one ribbon as far as I know. It should be the same. If that's incorrect, then somebody tell me. Yeah, Gordon brings up with the delete button missing, even the system administrator can't delete from the forum. That is 100% correct. Yep, we took it out for everybody, not just us, or not just the users. So that was kind of a bad example, but yeah. So what you really do is for things that CRM puts in, like share secured fields. I basically what I just picked delete because I got tired of looking. Quite honestly, that one would be one I would remove because I have never ever run into a situation where people have actually need to share secured fields. So basically, I would take that off. Just me. Okay. That or take off if you don't use the activity module stuff. You can take off the follow. Just about everything else is controlled through security. Okay, so remember that the primary method for you modifying the command bar and the possibilities that are there is to use a security role because CRM will modify the thing for you. When you start modifying it, it just gives you a maintenance point. Just don't forget that. Lon asks, is there one formula for all forms? No, my solution is on the account right here. See that account? So this is the ribbon, the form, but ribbon for the account only. So if I am after something else, I have to go to a different ribbon to get it to show up on all of those. But like I said, I've never ever had to do that. So Rob asked, can you show where the 3 rows of the ribbon workbench are? Okay, so this is everything, the home. Okay, so these are pretty much almost all entities are up here. This is for a subgrid, and then this is for the form itself. So pretty much this is specific to the an open record. This will show up basically. It's this thing right here. I'm sorry, go back. This thing right here. That's the home version right there. Okay, and again, CRM will modify it depending on the situation and the entity and the user. Do you use it on forms to use specific dialogues? If you're referring to popping up a dialogue, your own dialogue, yes, you can use JavaScript to do that with. Can you then copy the phone call button to the contact lead? No, you have to actually go and modify that. So what would happen is I would have to go into my solution, add my contact and my lead, and then just repeat the process. There's no copying between entities like this, unfortunately. Not right now anyway. I think I asked Scott if he could add that sometime because I've had that happen several times where I had to go manually do it. It doesn't take long because you're just creating pointers and stuff, so it takes a few minutes. So yeah, so that's kind of common. Okay. So that's primarily it. So this is a tool you have. Like I said, this is a different version. Like I said, the original version looks like this, and it's almost exactly the same layout. It just looks a little bit different, and the way they do stuff is a little bit different. So, if I can advise you anything, just get the tool and just kind of play around with it and get used to how it works. Remember now, this 2016 version is still in beta, so there are a few rough edges here and there. So just kind of keep that in mind. One of the cool things about this, and I can show you, is we can actually, so we'll go back to our delete button here. I can right click on it and just say, see. Can I do that? No, I think I found another bug. Hang on. Unhide. Okay, there we go. So I did unhide, and then if I want to, like my fancy button, say I don't want fancy button there, I can go and delete this. Okay, it's going to remove it, and I'm going to leave the other two changes. And now when I publish, it will revert the delete button back to what it was, and it will take off our fancy button off the interface. Okay, so again, the tool is really what shields you from all the hard work. Quite honestly, it's a lot of XML, and you really kind of have to understand stuff. So when you're learning to work with the ribbon, what you really need to figure out is the various rules. Scott has a lot of tips and how-tos on his develop1.net is the website. He has a lot of tips and techniques up there. You can get quite complicated, and quite honestly, sometimes the display rules that you're after are not exactly what you would think you would end up with, but they are possible. One of the things that they have is an or rule, which means we're going to do this or that. If this is the case, or this is the case, or this is the case. And what that will allow you to do is to bundle things together that are going to be slightly different checks. And it can be any of the checks. As long as one of them returns true, it'll actually either hide or show or whatever it might be. Okay. So again, this is not complicated. It's just a lot of arcane terminology, and you just have to kind of study it. So download the SDK and familiarize yourself with that, and then get Scott's tool, download it, and install it, and just give it a go. So what are the questions you guys have today? Anything? Oh, that's good. Gordon says he uses it on opportunities to enable the Mark Complete button only when all the fields required are filled in. That's a really good thing there. So one of the other things you can do, let's see here. Back to my fancy button command. So I'm going to add a display rule, and when you add a display rule, there's a thing called a step. So you go and pick the kind of step you want. So you can specify a value rule, which means, okay, I'm going to pick, normally it's true, I'm going to put the field and the value. One of the most complicated things that you're ever going to see here is the inverse result. Or invert result. You know what the invert result is? Anybody guess that? Okay. Basically, the invert result is a programmer being locked in a room and not talking to somebody for 10 years. It's the opposite of whatever the other thing is. The opposite of true is false. Okay? Don't ask me why, but somebody didn't get out much. That's all I got to say. Okay? So anyway, so you put your field in there, put the value you're expecting, it's a false to true, otherwise it's false. Yeah, another step, like form type or form state. The state sometimes, like if you're, like the default for that phone call button here, we have to have an existing record. We can't display this if it's a new record because there's nothing to tie it to. Okay, so do your own custom code, that works too. Another kind of step is, or rule is a JavaScript rule, which I don't see. It's interesting. Maybe I changed the name of that. There's basically a rule that you can run a piece of JavaScript, and as I mentioned, it returns true or false if it based on whatever logic you implement yourself. Okay. Gloria, I'm going to email everybody today or tomorrow after everything cycles through into CRM, and I'll have a link to Scott's tool. Or just go out to develop1.net. Develop in the number 1.net. Put that in the chat window. Okay. Any other questions you guys have for today? Like I said, this is, like I said, don't be afraid of the technology of the tool. It's a lot of really weird things, but if you play with enough, there's lots of good examples out there. This technology has been out for 5 years, so there should be a documentation on almost everything that you want to do. So just kind of look around for that. Okay. Okay, everybody. I really appreciate the time today. Have a great weekend, and we will catch you later. As I mentioned, this will be up on YouTube here by the end of the day, and then I'll send everybody an email out either later today or first thing in the morning with a link to this and the tools and anything else I can find. Okay.